Hello, this is Pastor Wesley Hilliard from Heritage Church in Van Buren, Arkansas. This is part of a teaching that I did on the book of Genesis. On our lesson 2, God speaks and creates, Genesis 1 through 31. After I taught on these verses, I did a presentation on origin studies that my daughter Lindsay and I had put together. It's talking about evolution versus intelligent design. In this presentation, I'm going to give you a brief history of origin studies and education, and I want to discuss with you 4 theories of evolution and the current rise of intelligent design theories. I didn't finish this on Wednesday night, September the 9th, 2015, so I want to provide this, make this available to people now. Well, from the beginning of humanity, people have been asking questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where did I come from? What is the meaning of life? And mostly humans have answered these questions through scriptures, through the Holy Bible. But in 1859, Charles Darwin shocked the world with his book, The Origin of the Species, which spelled out his theory of evolution. His theory is also known as Darwinism, philosophical naturalism, or gradualism. Well, what is evolution? It's the theory that life evolved over vast amounts of time, from the primordial soup to present-day humans. It's about the survival of the fittest. The species that's most able or fit to reproduce survives. Or the moral implications of this theory. Some say that if it's true, it removes the need for the concept of God actively involved in the creative process. Life begins and evolves by chance with no meaning. And if evolution is true, many argue then that the Bible is false. Well, what are the political implications of evolution? German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, heavily influenced by Darwin, became an atheist and quickly picked up on Darwin's theory of the survival of the fittest. In his book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he argued for humans to take charge of their own evolution and develop the Übermann, that is, the Superman or overcoming man, to breed a superior race of humans. Well, German political leader Adolf Hitler picked up on this idea and used it to support his goals to create a superior Aryan race and to justify the Holocaust, the slaughter of millions of Jews and other humans he considered weak links in the human gene pool. Well, many people began to apply Darwin's theory along with Einstein's theory of relativity to law and morals. The result is that now law is said to evolve with the times, and morals are no longer absolute or even meaningful. In this understanding, now embraced by the vast majority of our culture, there are no absolutes of right and wrong. Well, what have been some of the religious reactions to Darwin's theories? Probably the most famous is the Scopes trial of 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee. Some businessmen in Dayton were trying to bring some business to their little town, and they got a substitute teacher, Mr. Scopes, to file a lawsuit with the help of the ACLU, that is the American Civil Liberties Union. They were arguing his right to teach Darwinian evolution in the public schools. The ACLU got Clarence Darrow to argue for the case of teaching evolution. This side was known as modernism. Populist lawyer William Jennings Brown argued for religion and the right of the local school not to allow the teaching of Darwinism. Now, the jury voted in favor of religion, but modernism won the vote of public opinion. Since that time, public education has increasingly promoted Darwinian evolution or philosophical naturalism and excluded any reference to God or the Bible in any positive sense. Carl Sagan in his PBS series, The Cosmos, was an intelligent proponent of this philosophy. Richard Dawkins, one of England's most vocal evolutionary biologists and teachers, reflects the bias against religion of most evolutionists. He says, "I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's greatest evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate." With this kind of attitude also, many people seeking to get PhDs and positions in major universities have been denied if they did not embrace evolutionary theory. In August of 1999, the Kansas State School Board was ridiculed for saying that evolution should be taught as theory and not fact, and that the local school district has the right to teach origin studies as they choose. What's going on here? Why are they challenging evolution? Are they ignorant religious fundamentalists, or are they arguing for better science? I contend that the Kansas State School Board, much to the dismay of the evolutionists, is aware of the crisis the theory of evolution is in. This crisis is articulated by evolutionary scientist Arthur Keith. Evolution is unproved and unprovable. We believe it only because the only alternative is special creation, which is unthinkable. A closer look at evolution shows its many shortcomings. There is a complete lack of fossil evidence of any transitional forms. The Precambrian explosion, that is the sudden appearance of vast forms of life never seen before in the fossil evidence, is just one example of this. Popular author and Cambridge University professor Stephen Hawking tries to explain evolution's shortcomings and the Precambrian explosion by naming it punctuated equilibrium or spontaneous generation, and saying it's a natural process of evolution, that evolution is not always gradual, but can suddenly spring forth. This directly contradicts Darwin's explanation of gradualism, upon which he rested his entire theory. Further truth that has plunged evolution into crisis are the findings of in-depth studies on the formerly highly publicized evidence of the 12 human missing links, written about as undisputable facts in most science textbooks even today. 9 of the skeletons were proven to actually be apes and not humans at all. So, of the so-called missing links, such as Piltdown Man, were hoaxes. Of the other 3, Homo erectus was only thought subhuman because of his small brain, but his brain, as many of you women can see, turns out to be the same size of the average European male. I'm sure you're not surprised. Neanderthal man turns out not to be ape man, but actually a fairly recent human being with deformities due to the disease of rickets, which is a vitamin D deficiency. Cro-Magnon man is not a missing link. He's identical to modern humans. He was only thought pre-human because of primitive drawings in a nearby cave. And Lucy, or Australopithecus, which was discovered in 1974 in Ethiopia, has been determined to not be a missing link. It is so different from human beings, it is could not possibly be an ancestor. This brings us to evolution's smoking gun, what evolutionists say when they hope no one else is listening. I got to study Stephen Jay Gould and got to hear in person at my school in St. Louis back in the early 1980s. He's a Harvard University paleontologist. Also got to read several of his textbooks. He says the extreme rarity of the transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, but not the evidence of fossils. He goes on to say, yet Darwin was so wedded to gradualism that he wagered his entire theory on a denial of this literal record. The geological record is extremely imperfect, and this fact will to a large extent explain why we do not see interminable varieties connecting together all the extinct and existing forms of life by the finest graduated steps. As Darwin says, he who rejects these views on the nature of the geological record will rightly reject my whole theory. So Stephen Jay Gould admits, I wish only to point out that it was never seen in the rocks. We view our data as so bad that we never see the very process that we profess to study. In other words, he admits that the fossil record does not support the theory of evolution, and the claims of science textbooks are false. So what I want to show you today is that when it comes to cosmology, that is the study of origins and the workings of the universe, there's actually a vast continuum of reasonable theories to consider, not just Darwinism. So let me walk you through the cosmological continuum. As we've already explained, we begin with the most extreme evolutionary theory, that is philosophical naturalism, which is also known as gradualism or atheistic evolution. Then we have theistic evolution. This position says that evolution is simply the method by which God has chosen to create. Then we have the theory supported by Stephen Hawking and Stephen Jay Gould against Darwinian gradualism, known as punctuated equilibrium and spontaneous generation. The fourth evolutionary theory I want to point out is Lamarckianism. Now, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck was a contemporary and former friend of Darwin, who finally had a falling out with him. He was one of the first scientists to seriously challenge Darwin. Lamarck could only follow Darwinian evolution so far. He said, when it comes to humans, especially the human brain, you must make room for the creative hand of God. On the other side of the cosmological continuum are the intelligent design theories. These theories do not deny that we do see microevolution in many places, that is, small changes within species, but they do point out the fact that there is no evidence for macroevolution. For example, the evolution from one species to another. What they affirm in common is that the physical evidence of the universe leads to the conclusion that there must be an intelligent design and designer behind all that we observe. So what is intelligent design? Intelligent design or creationism is the theory that the earth, universe, and all life was created by an intelligent designer, that is, God. Dr. Philip Johnson has been one of the most prominent proponents of the intelligent design theories. He's a law professor at the prestigious University of California, Berkeley. His specialty is the logic of arguments. His unlikely entry into the battle against what he calls philosophical naturalism came while he was spending part of his vacation browsing in a bookstore. He picked up a book on evolution and began to read it. He quickly realized that the arguments and conclusions of the books were faulty. He decided to put Darwin on trial and see if the 140 years of research to support this theory had turned up enough real evidence to prove it. The result of his research is the book which rocked the scientific community, Darwin on Trial. Here he exposed the faulty logic of many of the evolutionist arguments and showed conclusively that they did not have the evidence to prove Darwin's theory. In fact, the evidence argued against it. Now, many evolutionary scientists argued that Philip Johnson, a law professor, was not qualified to make such judgments on their field. But soon many scientists joined the fight for intelligent design. One of those was cell biologist Dr. Michael Behe. He pointed out that Darwin had a pass-fail test for the theory of evolution. Darwin stated that if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Applying Darwin's tests to the ultra-complex world of molecular machinery and systems that have been discovered over the past 40 years, Dr. Michael Behe says, we can say that Darwin's theory has absolutely broken down. Dr. Werner Gitt, an information technologist specialist from Germany, applied the laws of his field of expertise to test Darwin's theory, and he concluded that the laws for the development of information are the best evidence for intelligent design. He says there can be no genetic code, no DNA, without an intelligent source of this information. It absolutely requires it. Again, these are just a few samples of those who have or are challenging Darwinism and giving rise to the theories of intelligent design. Just as we've looked at 4 variations of evolutionary theory, let's look at 4 variations of intelligent design theories. The first one we'll look at is known as geologic ages, or old Earth creation. 3 of the main points of the geologic ages, or old Earth theory, are that first, that the days of the biblical creation account in Genesis chapter 1 represent geological ages, not literal 24-hour days. Secondly, that astronomers claim that they can observe billions of years of activity in the universe. And thirdly, that the cosmic background radiation measurements of the universe prove that the universe is not eternal, that it does have a beginning, and that beginning can be calculated by measuring the cosmic background radiation. And based on these measurements, the universe appears to be around 15.75 billion years old. Now, Dr. Hugh, an astronomer from Caltech University, is the most prominent old Earth proponent. His arguments for intelligent design include his life-changing discovery that the Bible describes the fundamentals of the Big Bang cosmology that he sees as he studies, which includes a transcendent cosmic origin. That is, something from outside of the universe caused its beginnings. Secondly, continuous cosmic expansion. That is, that the universe is continuing to expand. And then continuously increasing entropy. That is, the universe is moving towards greater loss of energy and greater levels of loss of organization and complexity. He also sees great evidence for intelligent design. In fact, he lists 34 different characteristics of the universe, which demands exquisite fine-tuning for physical life to exist. Here's just a couple of those evidences. He notes that if the coupling constant for the strong nuclear force in red giant stars varied by as much as 0.5%, life on Earth would be impossible. In other words, the universe is much more finely tuned than previously believed. Also, life on Earth had a rapid origin. There was no life on Earth before 3.9 billion years ago, so there was less time for evolution to occur, making the theory of evolution. Another and pretty old intelligent design theory is known as the gap theory. The gap theory comes from the perceived gap between Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth then was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Gap theorists argue that the word was can be translated became. Thus, it would read, and the earth became without form and void. Thus, there may be a gap of billions of years between the original creative act in verse 1 and the beginning of verse 2. This may explain the billions of years that is seen in the geological record, at least the scientists claim is seen in the geological record, and the relative short history of Earth reported in the Bible. One very interesting theory is called time dilation. Time dilation's chief proponent is Dr. Gerald Schroeder. He's a nuclear physicist from MIT. He's now living in Jerusalem. He also has a PhD, I believe, in geology. He's a Hebrew scholar, and he's an Orthodox Jew. Now, Dr. Schroeder believes that the universe is created in 6 literal 24-hour days from God and the Bible's perspective. But from Earth's perspective, it's evaluated to be 15.75 billion years. Well, how in the world can this be? This is possible because of time dilation. That is, that the ages of the universe are contained in 6 24-hour days. This is part of Einstein's theory of relativity. That is, your perception of time is relative to you. The expansion of the universe is like the nautilus shell. It is an exponential spiral. In other words, each ring is twice as large as the previous one. The Bible, in God's perspective before the appearance of humans, is from the center looking forward. From this perspective, the creation period is 6 literal 24-hour periods. But our perspective is from the realms of the ever-expanding universe, moving away from the center, looking back as we travel from the original center of the universe. In time, from the center moves toward us, and it dilates, it stretches and expands from 6 days to 15.75 billion years. The following chart maps this out. When Dr. Schroeder applies this theory of time dilation to what secular science reports, it is amazing. The final theory on the cosmological continuum is the young Earth creation, or catastrophism. I want to spend the rest of my time on this. The main points of this theory include that the 6 days of creation listed in the Bible were 6 literal 24-hour periods. The age of the earth can be closely estimated from the generations and ages of humans listed in the Bible from Adam to recorded history, that is around 10 to 6,000 years old. and much of what scientists claim took millions of years to form, such as the Grand Canyon, were actually caused by catastrophic events on the Earth's surface, such as a global flood, volcanoes, etc. They also argue that carbon dating is negatively affected by catastrophic events and is not accurate. Two examples of evidence the young Earth proponents point to in order to support their theory are, first, the Earth's magnetic field's rapid decay. Because of this decay, the suggestion that the Earth is millions of years old, they say, is impossible because the magnetic field would have to have been impossibly strong in order for it to exist today. A second example they point to is Mount St. Helens eruption. For them, it's a great case study for their theory of catastrophism. Just two amazing examples that they point to are, number one, the rapidly formed stratification that they see in Mount St. Helens, that there's 25 feet in one day with many fine layers, plus 600 feet that you observe that was done in less than 6 years. They also see rapid erosion, that is, a mud flow can erode a canyon over 140 feet deep in one day. Again, this all just proves their point that geological formations that would normally be interpreted to take many thousands of years to form were actually formed and can be formed in a single day. Mount St. Helens has caused geologists all over the world to re-examine their basic beliefs that layers can be formed suddenly during catastrophe. To review, I've shown you on the Cosmological Continuum 4 theories of evolution and 4 theories of intelligent design. I've reviewed the history of origin studies, and I've shown you the crisis in which the theory of evolution is in. And these are just some of my conclusions about origin studies. Number one, that evolution is not proven fact, but it's a theory in crisis. Other theories should be allowed to be taught in schools, and intelligent design theories make more sense to me. They correlate with the scientific data better. They match up with the biblical account. They give meaning and value to all life. And as a bonus, they support my faith. Well, I hope you've enjoyed and learned from this presentation, and I hope that I've opened your mind and perhaps persuaded you that evolution is not proven fact, that other theories of origin should be allowed to be taught and discussed in schools, and that intelligent design theories have scientific merit and should be taken seriously. Thanks so much for listening.